In my mind, the way I look at this is, I want to show them that I'm doing what I can to prevent something from coming in, in one of our ingredients. And if I can prevent that with these specific procedures, I know I'm not only setting myself up for success, but I'm also setting up that end user for success.
Welcome to the Feed Science Podcast brought to you by Biosecurity. I'm Carlos Campabadal from Kansas State University, dedicated to bringing you the latest insights and discussions in the feed science industry. Get ready to expand your knowledge and stay ahead with today's episode. So today it is a great pleasure for me to have Dr. Roger Cochrane from SAM Nutrition here as a guest. Roger, welcome. It's always good to see you, a fellow K-State alumni here, and happy to host you today here in the Feed Science Podcast. Roger, how you doing?
Good, Carlos. Good to see you virtually here today.
Great, perfect. So as we discuss today's episode, I think it will be good for our audience to learn a little bit about yourself. So you can kind of tell us a little bit how you end up in this field and where you are working today with SAM and with Nexus powered by SAM, and we'll hit it off from there.
Sure. Well, first off, Carlos, thank you to you, Biosecurity, and the Feed Science Podcast for the opportunity today to talk with the listeners and viewers on really SAM Nutrition and how we started with responsible import guidelines and really have taken that and developed into Nexus powered by SAM, which is our feed additive division. And on my background, to get where I'm at today, it's quite a little bit of a journey here. I started out originally from Southern Indiana, grew up on a small row crop farm, really no agriculture experience, helped on the farm here and there, but no livestock experience at all. Went to a small liberal arts school in Indiana called Franklin College, majored in chemistry and minored in biology there, and kind of hit the point where I needed to figure out where I wanted to go or what path, and was able to come out to Kansas State University for 10 weeks going into my senior year to do some research under a REU program through the National Science Foundation, and that landed me in the grain science program out there with Kyle Probst. And, enjoyed the research side. The project wasn't necessarily my forte, but that led me back out to K-State, where I got my master's in grain science under Cassie Jones, and then followed Cassie over to animal science when she made that transition. So continued on with my PhD there in animal science and really focused in on feed mitigation, feed biosecurity, and importing of ingredients safely.
That's great, and I don't know, you're probably aware that Kyle is also from Indiana, and funny enough, yesterday was his birthday. So anyway, I know Kyle because we used to share an office at Purdue University when we were both grad students many years ago. So, but anyway, this is very interesting, and the moral of the story of what you just said is that you never know where you're going to end up, and of course, even is that you were in the agriculture family and stuff, you ended up in this area, which is great. So this is very important. So if you don't mind, kind of like telling us a little bit about your job. What is the main thing that you actually do there at Nexus and SAM Nutrition, and then we'll kind of lead it there to know where you are. And of course, for our audience, please like us. Please give us the famous thumbs up if you like today's episode.
To where I'm at today, I've been with SAM Nutrition here a little over a year now. Previously with Pipestone Nutrition for about 5 years. Big focus on feed mill biosecurity, doing a lot of audits through feed mills, basically all the way across the Midwest. And during that time was also able to work with SAM Nutrition a little bit on the responsible import guidelines. So majority of my time today, I would be the director of technical services. So I would support our responsible imports program, help out at the feed mill level. If we have customers that have concerns with a product or, hey, this may not be flowing. Hey, we think we may want to change this design. What are your thoughts or ideas there? Have you seen different equipment in these scenarios? I also help support our sales team on that front as well. And then here in the last month, we launched Nexus, which is powered by SAM. It's our feed additive division. So along with our sales team, I would be a huge part of that process as well. So more of the technical side, right? When you get into those feed additives and how those interact within the animal and, how we can look at the feed mill levels too with those.
At Nexus, powered by SAM, We redefine livestock nutrition with science-backed innovations that enhance performance, maximize efficiency, and promote sustainability. We connect producers with the future of animal health and productivity through cutting-edge feed technologies and environmentally conscious solutions. By addressing the demand for efficient, sustainable nutrition, we reflect SAM Nutrition's commitment to excellence, delivering premium, scientifically proven solutions that drive results.
And this is very interesting. You mentioned something about the import guidelines, and I know there's a certain responsibility, and you guys call RIG, responsible import guidelines. So I know that our audience is worldwide, and I'm pretty sure that they will actually be interested to know what it is, and then of course understand what triggered it. How did it started? So if you could tell us a little bit more on that technical perspective, what are those?
So responsible import guidelines, I'm kind of going to break it out into two sections here. One, I like to look at as an industry as a whole. And really this goes back to, call it 2018, 2019, when we had the threat of African swine fever virus. We saw that virus start to really become in the forefront of everybody's minds when we saw that spreading through China. And then I'm going to take a step back again, even further to 2013 and 14. And, why are we concerned there? Well, we had a virus that came in the United States, which was porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. And really, we started to learn and see that, hey, we knew bacteria could move around and feed ingredients, but we hadn't really went the viral route until that point. And really, in that 2013, 14, a lot of research was being completed. Hey, can this virus truly move through ingredients? If they're imported, even domestically, can it move around if it becomes contaminated? So really, the thought came from the industry is how can we safely start to bring products in, that we need? And in reality, some of those only come from countries of concern. We can't just go and pull that off the shelf here domestically. So when we look at the industry, a lot of the thought process was, well, we know we can hold an ingredient, we can track a transit time. So really that's where it really started is, hey, we think we can quarantine these for a certain time before it goes from a warehouse to a feed mill. And really some of the problems you start to get into there is, hey, products aren't really segregated. I have products coming in at different time points. Is the size of my warehouse really big enough to do that? As well, right? We've got a ton of different things coming in, and there was some data there, but that data was slowly generated, right? It's just the process of research. So that was kind of the the industry side of it as a whole, and then I think where SAM Nutrition really came in and really started to push this idea of responsible import guidelines. Really started around the idea of what we called a true quarantine system. So we would bring containers of product into a specific location that was attached to the warehouse where we could put those in one room at a specific time and temperature. And not only the product, but the forklift that was unloading all stayed in that room until we knew we met that temperature and time standpoint. So kind of that's that second level of safety there. And really what I think you learn from that too is not only am I quarantining that product and I can hold it, but thinking of things such as QA QC holds, right? So that product's sitting there a little bit longer. We always know we're going to have results back in time before product goes out, which was a nice little step there. And it's all based off science too. I think that's one of the biggest pushes too. Is these decisions initially, right? We had to throw everything at it, but now we can kind of pull back in certain areas where we've got the data. We understand transit times. We've seen what temperatures can do as that product comes in from different countries into the different ports as well.
And that is very interesting. I as a matter of fact, last week I was in a specific feed mill out of the country and very big, and their quarantine section was next to the processing on that same building, next to the connected to the warehouse where there was quarantine there, finished feed, and feed ingredients in bags, all under the same roof. Maybe it's sectionized, but not necessarily a true quarantine of what that means, So this is something very important because you see it in many places, and so based on that, on those responsible import guidelines, how can we further strengthen? What can people do, or how do they get connected into this?
So for us, the way we I think the industry as a whole was very comfortable with the procedures that were being done. But to strengthen that further, the biggest question that we got, and actually that I had, coming into this role was, hey, what are the manufacturers of these products actually doing from a biosecurity and quality standpoint, right? We don't get to see it. We're trying to base everything off paper trails, understanding processes. So it's the idea of, you trust, but you have to verify. So what we kind of really started to do was to start and visit these manufacturing facilities. I'm going to say verification a lot, right? So it's we have them go through that approval process, and we've got to verify all those steps. We're talking anything from manufacturing and process controls, but really even at the biosecurity level too. And I think what that really does, and how we start to strengthen that, not only with our relationship with those manufacturers, but ultimately our end users, is where we've got to build that trust. So the more trust and transparency that we can, communicate with them and show them from the trips to visiting these facilities, I think it's a win-win, not only for us and the customer, but it starts to build that relationship further with those manufacturing facilities. And it also allows us to see the difference between the internal market and external markets there, from an importation exportation standpoint.
So you guys are basically in a way connecting the end user in the United States with the global markets, and we understand a little bit about that. But why is it so important? I mean, what will be that link so important process overall in making feed?
Yeah, and I think when we started thinking about this too, obviously the Feed Science podcast, right? One of the best ways to think about how we wanted to do that and why is, we have FSMA in our mind, right? Food safety plans. And, in my mind, the way I look at this is, I want to show them that I'm doing what I can to prevent something from coming in, in one of our ingredients. And if I can prevent that with these specific procedures, I know I'm not only setting myself up for success, but I'm also setting up that end user for success, and potentially on a future hazard as well. Something that may not be there today that could come in the future. I know I've got procedures in place. And if I can successfully do that, bring a product in responsibly and safely through this procedure, then I really start to link that domestic user to these global markets. And the reason that's so important is, and I think, what we're dealing with right now, we have, we're faced with these geopolitical parameters that we really can't control, in our business, and our end users can't. But, things that we can control is we can start looking at other countries, other sources of these products where we can try and provide that optionality then to meet their needs safely and responsibly. And if you start looking at SAM Nutrition, we're looking at over 20 different countries with various products. So I know if I can follow this process to a T, bring it in safe, responsibly, then I'm really starting to link that end user back to all these global markets to help them meet their successful factors as well.
So it brings like I'll call it a peace of mind to the end user, and connected because we're in a small world, especially when you talk about our industry, animal production, to those global markets. So, and just for very important for our audience, please subscribe to the channel, click on the bell to receive notifications there. So going back to the conversation, so we kind of bring that peace of mind to the end users compared to the global markets. And can you just kind of tell us a little bit about some of those examples of things that you guys do? Feed ingredients come from many places, but there are specific markets that have a higher tendency to come into the United States than others.
Yeah, so and I think you hit it on the head there, Carlos. A majority of products come from a few countries, right? And I'm going to take a step further, and we're going to kind of separate that out a little bit too. Looking at how maybe we screen for a commodity-based product versus more of like a feed additive product. And when I mention commodities, I'm leaning more into the micro commodities, so like an amino acid, for instance, or some of these vitamins, right? We're very limited on where we can get those. There may be a ton of manufacturers of those, but they're only going to come from certain areas. And for us, the way we go through and really start to do this is we're going to put those manufacturers through what I'm going to call our pre-screen process. So this is our paper trail section of documentation and understanding, a flow diagram, their initial interview that they're going to go through and do with us, the sample testing, verification against a COA. Is that product consistent? Is there any potential adulterants and purity, right? So things that we do domestically here with products, we're basically taking that and transitioning it into the international side. If they get through that first step for us, and then that's when we're starting to look at the verification side. So we're going to go and look at these facilities. We're going to audit that manufacturing facility, from an SOP standpoint, all the way to biosecurity, which I think is obviously very important from the responsible side. And this is anything not only just manufacturing. So the biosecurity, all those SOPs, understanding the site layout. Hey, is there potentially livestock in this area too? And then a step further, trying to understand how this product is actually going from, manufacturing site A or B to the port. How does that get transported? Are they open trucks? Are they, stacked bags? Or do I have that in a sealed container by the time it gets to the port? So a lot of uncertainties there that I think very hard to verify unless you go actually see this and do that step.
So a little bit on that sense. You guys have a specific clients, and we could put an example so people can understand that. I mean, a lot of feed additives here in the United States and the majority of the world actually come from China. So how explain a little bit how that process, I mean, an example there from China specifically, and who gets to choose that partner over there? Will that be SAM Nutrition, or will that be your clients or a specific person that requests that?
For us, Carlos, on that one, it's ultimately going to come down to, us working with the customer is the easiest way to put that. So, I'll take an amino acid, for example. Hey, there may be 3 lysine manufacturers, for example, out there. We're going to bring those samples in, try and present those to our customers and say, hey, these are the 3 samples that we think are good. It's went through and checked all of our boxes. How do you think these will interact within, your system with your feed mill? Is there a consistency concern you have? And ultimately, we'll factor all that information into the decision of what product we want to bring in from that side. I think once you get in the feed additive realm, that's going to change quite a bit then.
Oh, okay. And first of all, of course, for our audience, if you have any questions on this topic, please let us know on the comment section there on the podcast, and we'll be sure to get them to Roger. So, talking about feed additives, I mean, a little bit of how do you guys select those? I mean, specifically, and for those manufacturing partners in terms of so many so many, but they're always in a specific location, like you mentioned. So what parameters you guys use for that?
So for the feed additive side, for us, everything we've talked about so far in the podcast, that's step A. So with these feed additives, we're going to take it a step further. This is not something that I can just go pull off a shelf from, manufacturer A. When we think feed additives, we think performance with those feed additives, right? We want to see an ROI. So we want to make sure that product is, going to work and help with the growth of those animals. So in our side, we're starting to look more at contamination. Is there any chance of, things like a heavy metal, PCB?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing further testing of those products in those specific realms. And then, also for me, I think, from a feed science standpoint, pretty true to my heart is the feed mill side. So we want to make sure these are going to, flow through a feed mill or flow through a micro bin. We want to make sure they're going to mix uniformly in that feed as well. We don't want those to separate out. So I kind of classify those parameters as step 2.
Okay.
And then step 3 is going to be the research side, which is where we start to get more on the technical front of, Nexus and things within SAM, where we're going to try and find these products that we know there's research on, whether a lot of the time it's at the manufacturer level. Maybe they've done some smaller trials, and then, hey, we need to partner with a university to get some more information. Or sometimes that product already has university research with us, with that product, and we can use that information. Yeah, we might want to do a little bit more, but typically that's kind of the realm that we're looking at. So more of a 3-step process. That initial, kind of more testing, understanding how it's going to interact, and then following up with, either data that's already there or continuing to do that research at the university level.
3 steps to make the whole thing, and just to understand those 3 steps, and I know it could vary, but a range of time that, I'm interested in X feed additive from X location. How long does it take and for that to happen? I know it could vary, but
Yeah, loaded question on that one, Carlos. So many variables there, but let's say that, product A, it's got research behind it. Something that's probably more in like a 6-month realm to bring to market. If we need to go do further research, you're over a year. You think of a swine trial. Yeah, you can get some nursery data pretty quick, but if I need to run a finishing trial,
Yeah.
you may not have that data for 6 months or more. And then to put that together, start to present that to customers, make determinations internally as well, over a year.
Well, and that's not too bad. I mean, when you think about it, I put my head as a grain storage person when you're trying to bring those type of products to control insect population, things like that, it's even longer. So I mean, I actually think that's not even that bad. So that's very, very fast in a way.
Yeah, and it all comes back to what data is there on those products to begin with. If there's not data, you're going to be over that year then, right?
Yeah, of course. And then, of course, our audience, like us. If you like this, put a like there on. If you like this podcast today and all this great information, it'll be like a thumbs up for us. So, Roger. So very important overall. Tell us a little bit more about Sam Nutrition. Find where you guys headed on all this, and maybe a little bit of explanation of the rest of the things that Sam Nutrition is looking into.
Yeah. So for us, Sam Nutrition initially, really well known on the amino acid side. And really, I think where we got our, the true bulk of the business in the start from, Sam's been around over 20 years to date. But, I think, if we look back, responsible import guidelines really got Sam Nutrition going. And it's, hey, what do we do next, or where do we need to look at? And that's where the feed additive side came in. So Nexus, which is powered by Sam, was launched roughly a month ago down at IPPE in Atlanta. And really what that is if you think of what Nexus means, right, we're trying to link things together. And for us, that means different things, depending on the conversation we're having. Initially, in my mind, we're trying to link that science of these feed additives to the performance of the animal. But now what we've, in my mind too, some of these additives that are out there, we're starting to look at other markets, right? So I'm going to try and link two things. I'm trying to link that domestic user to all those international markets that are out there. And really what our thought there is, we're thinking locally for our customers and how can we help them. But, we're going to act globally on that. We want to continue to find solutions for them, outside of, the major importation countries that are there. And really what that comes down to is trying to link that high performance that we think we can get, or we know we can get with some of these additives, back to a reasonable price. And when we look at what those products are for us currently today, this list, I think, will continue to evolve year over year through innovation and research. But where we're spending the bulk of our time currently is what we're going to say is NexTrace, Nexzyme, and NexTrace would be hydroxy trace minerals. So common in all diets that are out there. So that was kind of our launching point for this was NexTrace. So tribasic copper chlorides, zincs, manganese, and then following up with that will be Nexzyme. So more of an enzyme platform as well. So looking at things such as like a heat stable phytase that we can bring into the market as well. And then the one that's probably got the most buzz around it, not only for us but other products out there. We have the product called Cabnin, which would be, polyphenol based antioxidant replacer. A lot of information there, a lot of research on that product, and really timely, with what we see in the industry with the way vitamin E prices have fluctuated over the last year or so. So that one's been one of, spent a lot of time and attention and research too.
Great. No, this is great. And you, of course, you guys are doing a fantastic job. Overall, for our audience, please visit our website, wisenetics.com, and learn more about all the different podcast segments that we have, like poultry, swine, dairy, beef, of course, this one, the feed science, and of course, pet food. So
it's time for our famous three.
Roger, we're getting a little bit into the end of this podcast. Any final comments that you want to talk a little bit about everything that you have mentioned today?
Sure. I think it's just important just to kind of, if you kind of wrap everything together, right? It's just thinking I've got to make sure I'm doing things responsibly, safely, not only protect my business, but ultimately, and where my heart is I want to protect that end user all the way down to the farmer. And this start is just quarantine and holding products, but now we've involved that to visiting these sites and bringing these different products to market that we can test. They're high quality, and I can start to link that end user to those global markets.
Great. No, perfect. This is great information. So, all right. So, as we know, everybody that we host here, we always like to ask them a little bit of more where they could find more information. So, what will be a good source for anybody to learn more about what you guys are doing? The RIG, the Responsible Importing Guidelines. Any way that you could direct them to a specific place, website, podcasts too, I guess, books or anything like that you could kind of like tell them to go?
Yeah, on the responsible import guidelines side, some of the initial information came out from the Swine Health Improvement Center on holding times there, and some of that research is actually done down at K-State. And then a step further, I would say, just from the same nutrition aspect, we did a lot of work with Scott D at Pipestone. On to develop some of those, further time and temperature and transporting products throughout the U.S. So there are 4 published papers on that, Carlos, and that's something I think we could probably send over and attach to those as well if there's further interest in seeing some of that data and information on how we really start to build this program from the ground up.
Perfect. Any other suggestions so can help people outside of this specific topic, but also related in a way we could learn more about? Because, when you think about it, I'm in the feed mill animal production industry. I may not know anything about importing. If there isn't a particular place that people can go learn more about, overall, what that mean? People think it's just call and that's it. You get stuff, but not necessarily that's the case. Any resource or place to learn more about it?
I think on that one, if there's specific questions on a say a product, for instance, reaching out to if it's a SAM nutrition, right?
Perfect.
Reaching directly out to that supplier, I think that's, in my opinion, where you're going to get the most realistic and honest answers is from those people who are actually doing it. I'm sure there's websites out there that talk through the process, right? We can go and see how things are imported, but if you truly want to understand the procedures that are going on, talk to the suppliers.
That's great advice and gets everybody connected. So with that, thank you very much, Roger, and we really appreciate you coming here today to talk about a very important topic on responsible importing guidelines and everything related to that. And with that, this concludes another episode of the Feed Science Podcast presented by Wisenetics. Thank you, everybody, and of course you, Roger, for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to stay updated and on any future episode. And if you have enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. Your feedback is very valuable, but we can know, of course, how can we improve. Until next time, this is Carlos Campabadal from the Feed Science Podcast signing off.